Welcome to the Church in the Wild podcast. You'll be hearing a re-recording of the words from worship from Sunday, November 9th, 2025. We did not hit record during our worship gathering, so we did our best to re-record what was shared, where we discuss the second gate of grief from Francis Weller's 5 Gates of Grief, the places that have not known love. If you want to find out more about Church in the Wild and all of our upcoming events and programs, just go to churchinthewild.org. Thanks for listening. This nature moment was written by Sue and shared. So I am sharing her words for the podcast recording. Today's nature connection provides a look into the sights and sounds of nature and how it teaches us resilience in the face of adversity. Before I read from sources I found, I'd like to share a brief history about my own mother, who was the naturalist in our family. She taught every one of us 5 siblings, right through to the last great-grandchildren before her death, about the importance of nature and preserving what our Creator has provided for us. There were many times when we took a shoebox and buried our pets deep in the earth's pet cemetery, whether it be a hamster found behind the refrigerator covered in dust, or a frog that stopped croaking, or a bird with a wounded wing. All spiders were to be captured in jars and placed outside. This also taught us lessons on life and death and the grieving process, which we continue to share with our own families. Through its ability to ground us in the present moment, while not escaping from reality, nature provides a safe space for expression, fostering connection and community and cultivating a sense of renewal and hope. Nature connection activities hold immense therapeutic potential. Through grief, we discover our inner strength and the ability to grow amidst pain. An article from Homesteaders Life Company on the Circle of Life reads, "Just as trees shed their leaves in autumn, we must embrace the beauty in the cycles of life." Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Nature always wears the colors of the spirit," meaning that our response to nature is often influenced by our mood, a timeless reminder of the profound connection between our inner worlds and the worlds that surround us. An article by Sam Hodder in the February 2025 issue of Save the Redwoods League. Sam writes, "Regardless of the emotional burdens we carry or the experiences that have shaped us, there is an infusion of resilience people experience after time in the forest. There is something about the longevity of redwoods, almost verging on immortality, their unfathomable heights, with branches reaching to the arches of heaven. Each ancient tree seems to exhibit a tangible will to survive, bearing the scars of thousands of fires and storms with patient majesty. Here is nature's prescription for heartbreak and woe, a hushed stillness, the smell of damp earth, infinite shades of green." There is real data confirming that a chemical reaction occurs in the brain when exposed to the beauty of nature. Sam continues, "But we don't need that proof to know that a walk in the redwoods calms our minds, soothes our souls, and helps to heal our broken hearts." Or what one feels when touching the texture of tree bark, listening to the soothing sounds of a flowing stream, observing intricate patterns of leaves, or as we recently learned, watching snowflakes and their intricate patterns. As we sit here this afternoon, reflecting in the flames of a warm fire or gazing out the window on the lake, we feel a sense of everything will be okay. If there is one thing people say about navigating pain and loss, it's that everyone reacts and processes differently. There is no playbook or one-size-fits-all approach. The mind often becomes entangled in memories of the past or fears about the future. Nature has a remarkable ability to ground us in the present moment. Melissa Piasky, Senior Associate Dean at the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine, answers when, why, and how we need nature in our lives, and explains how people's brains and bodies are changed for the better when exposed to nature. Exposure to green spaces is one of the social determinants of health. Findings of improved mental health, memory, creativity, and lower mortality. For centuries, humans have deliberately designed contact with the natural world for well-being. In the Middle Ages, monastery cures included rest and work in a garden. In modern times, research on the benefits of contact with forests began in the 1980s and 90s with physiological measurements to track the impact. But how much exposure to nature do we need? And is a plant in an office enough? All people benefit from exposure and interaction. The right dose and duration depends on each person's circumstances. On one end of the spectrum, just being placed near a window with a natural view, compared to a view of a brick wall, is associated with faster healing and less pain medication for surgical patients. Indoor plants and photos of natural places bring benefits when indoors. Virtual environments using video also have measurable benefits. Dr. Piasky goes on to say that the best approach to this question of how to get the right dose is to first acknowledge that we have busy lives and have competing demands on our time, so we need to do what works. Combining nature time with other activities, such as meetings with colleagues and get-togethers with family and friends, has the added benefits of social connections and shared experiences, and planning some of our favorite types of exercise in natural spaces. Standing beneath the expansive canopy of a forest or gazing up at the star-studded sky reminds us of the wonder and grandeur of the universe and our place within it. This broader perspective can help people who are grappling with grief to see their pain and loss as part of a larger tapestry of life and change. I say, let our healing begin. Allow Mother Earth to hold our grief with compassion while you foster acceptance, renewal, and inner calm. Our poem today is The Healing Time by Pesha Gertler. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life, all the unattended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again, where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. Our wisdom today comes from Francis Weller's book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Rituals of Renewal and the Sacred Work of Grief. Grief is a powerful solvent capable of softening the hardest of places in our hearts. When we can truly weep for ourselves and those places of shame, we have invited the first soothing waters of healing to wash through our souls. Grieving, by its very nature, confirms our worth. I am worth crying over. My losses matter. I can still feel the grace that came when I truly allowed myself to grieve all of my own losses connected to a life filled with shame. Our response to this wisdom: wounds heal through care and compassion. All the places that have yet to know love, may they know love. So for the month of November, we have been on the super fun topic of grief. But it feels like the right season. The weather has been matching the mood of this topic quite well for us. And it is important. We know how important grief is and how unappreciated it is in our culture, how we're only allowed a certain amount of grief for different things. So we're looking at Francis Weller's concept of the 5 gates of grief, these entry points where we can enter into the sacred ritual of grief as he understands it. And last week we started with the first one, which he says is the most acceptable in our culture. People are willing to accept grief over loss. And so the first gate, though, is very broad. All that we love, we will lose. And we talked last week how everything is a gift and nothing lasts. This human truth of our existence that we must all face. And it is true, our culture gives some allowance for this grief. You know, we get a bereavement day or two when a family member dies, but when a pet dies, there's no time off allowed, or there's only so many days where we feel like we're allowed to talk about the pain or grief of that, what's deemed a smaller loss. But all of that is kind of nonsense, because we all experience different losses in different ways, and they have different impacts on us at different times in our lives. So we want to make more room for grief in our culture. We also talked about last week how unprocessed grief, about pushing that grief down in ourselves, leads to sickness. He talked about congestive heart failure being the #1 cause of death in America, and how it's not just the plaque and cholesterol congesting our heart, but all the unprocessed grief we have not allowed ourselves to feel and move through. And this is a major aspect of the second gate of grief, which he calls the places that have not known love. And this is how he describes those places. These are profoundly tender places that have lived outside of kindness, compassion, warmth, or welcome. The places within that have been wrapped in shame and banished. We often hate these parts of ourselves, hold them in contempt, and refuse to allow them the light of day, thereby denying these parts of ourselves the healing salve of community. What we perceive as defective about ourselves, we also experience as loss. But we cannot grieve for something that we feel is outside the circle of worth. We may chronically sense the presence of sorrow, but we're unable to truly grieve because we feel in our body that this piece of who we are is unworthy of grief. This entry into grief is often referred to as our shadow, or a shadow self. We may not even have full consciousness of these parts of ourselves because we have denied them and pushed them away. But they are wounds within us. And when a wound is not cared for, it will infect the whole body. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world as an event. What we resist persists in our lives, calling us to attend to it, to care for these wounds. These hidden wounds, the places that haven't known love, are shadows. They will call for our attention and are often the source of our greatest mental and physical pain. I think of queer friends I know who spent years in the closet and how they talk about being depressed and sick and anxious, denying part of their identity, made them ill until they were able to accept and embrace who they truly were. One of my favorite artists, musical artists, Brandi Carlile, just released a new album. It's fantastic. Returning to Myself, it's called. And so she's doing a lot of press for this album, of course. And I heard an interview recently where she talked about how, a few years back, as she was really kind of getting the recognition she deserves, winning her first Emmys and being asked to play at the Emmys, she talked about how she kept getting sick every time she got invited to another big opportunity, and she said yes, she would get sick, get a cold. And it was so bad that she eventually, was asking around, like, who do I go to? Obviously, this is some kind of psychosomatic issue going on. She could recognize that much, but she didn't know how to fix it. So finally, she got a recommendation to some type of doctor, and this doctor asked her, well, who is your other self? The person saying yes to these things, that's great, but who's the other person within that might want to say no to this? And instantly she knew. She's like, oh, well, myself that loves to be out on the fishing boat in the middle of nowhere by myself, dirty, grubby, and out in nature. And so she had to reconcile these two selves within, her performer self and her, nature-loving, individual, solo, out fishing self. And once she was able to allow those two parts of herself to converse and come to an agreement, and, I think not always say yes to some things, but to give that other self a chance to live, she stopped getting sick. And she said, yeah, I haven't gotten sick since. So it's fascinating how powerful our minds are, especially when it comes to the health of our bodies. Weller says, no one arrives on this earth encrusted with shame. Rather, shame settles in our bones over time, accumulating during times of neglect or violation. And, I think even minor things or just the regularity with which we hear certain messages, especially in our culture, like bodies are sinful, cover up, like the message that girls always hear, oh, cover yourself, you don't want to be a distraction to the boys, as if it's their responsibility, right? But we hear certain messages over and over that might seem innocuous once or twice, but when we hear it all the time, like, oh, you're such a pig, don't chew with your mouth open, or you're so lazy, or, these messages that we hear from others, we start to internalize and say them to ourselves, and they create a sense of shame around certain things. Trauma, as it were, is inherent to being human. I mean, birth itself is traumatic, not just to the mother or parents, but to the baby. Thankfully, we usually don't remember it. But when we become overwhelmed by pain or painful emotions, especially at a young age, we're not equipped to deal with them. And they tend to turn into self-hate. I can't tell you how many victims of violence I know that develop this sense that they deserved the violence that was enacted against them, that they somehow were the ones who were wrong, and so that's why this happened to them, that something about them invited this trauma into their lives. For some reason, our especially our young brains tend to do this with traumatic events. And so it was interesting in the book, he asks to think about, how do you react when you mess up or you fall short, or someone corrects you and says, no, that's wrong. When you think about your reaction to being wrong or messing up, that can often tell us a lot or lead us down into the shadow. So when I mess up, I get angry. Really, the anger is at myself, but I project my anger towards others, especially the people I love, right? Because I know they will still love me after my temper tantrum is over. We tend to do this. We take out our hardest emotions on the people closest to us. And this is probably somewhat learned from my father. My father was a very scary person to live with. He was an alcoholic, bipolar, probably OCD, flew off the handle at the flip of a switch, very unpredictable, scary, mean. And I lived most of my childhood when we lived with him in fear of my life. I don't know that I was really at risk of losing my life to him, but as a child, that's how I interpreted it. That's how it felt. I was in constant fear of my life. When he got upset, I felt so scared that I might die. My father also had high blood pressure. So when I started showing high blood pressure during my second pregnancy, I started off annoyed. And I said, well, this is stress. I'm having a baby during a pandemic. And I tried to tell all the nurses and doctors, like, I'm fine. Just leave me alone. It's not a big deal. Well, it wasn't fine. They wouldn't leave me alone. Had to have emergency C-section. A very traumatic event in itself. And then afterwards, a few months afterwards, a nurse told me, well, people who have high blood pressure during pregnancy are more likely to continue to have high blood pressure for the rest of their life. And she was trying to just like be aware. And I was furious. I was instantly so mad. And I said, no, that won't happen. I've always had low blood pressure. It's always been great. This is not going to happen to me. In fact, I was so assured that I would not continue to have high blood pressure that I had some really scary instances where I, said, oh yeah, I'm good now, and stopped taking the medication for it, and it would spike back up, and had to go to the ER. And it really took me nearly 2 years to accept that I have high blood pressure. This is not a moral failing. There was nothing I did wrong. It wasn't my fault. And having high blood pressure did not make me just like my father. In therapy, I realized I felt ashamed for having high blood pressure, a very common physical ailment, right? But that shame made me mad. And what does getting angry with other people do? Well, not only does it raise your blood pressure more, but it pushes them away. It isolated me, and that made me more angry. And then I realized through processing this feeling how silly and ridiculous this was. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing, why would I? This is so silly. Why am I feeling ashamed and guilty about this or getting angry at other people? And then I started being hard on myself for having what I thought was this absurd reaction. It wasn't until I was able to fully share all of my honest thoughts and feelings, uncensored, on this topic with my therapist, and to hear her gentle reflection that, actually this is a common response. And we talk through why these feelings might be coming up for me around this topic. It connects to a lot of trauma in my life. My father, my emergency C-section during a pandemic, like all of these things were traumatic experiences, and my body and mind didn't have time to fully process them in the moment. And so when I was finally able to hear her response and reflections to these, very real, normal feelings, I was then able to start showing myself some compassion. I was able to see my psyche was doing what it thought was best to protect me. And as soon as I approached my inner shame and frustration with compassion and understanding, it all started to evaporate. And here I am now talking about it openly. 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even told anyone I had high blood pressure, unless they needed to know, unless it was my doctor or something. And now I can talk about it openly because I know it's not a moral failing and it doesn't change anything about who I am as a person. Now, I'll be honest, this is a pretty benign example in my life of shame. Other examples, I don't want to make my pulpit a therapist couch, and I don't need to, because I know every single person can relate to the trauma and shame that comes through living with other hurt, broken people in this world. It's taken me years of therapy and EMDR therapy to process the trauma. And then after processing it, right, getting a new perspective on it, it's so wonderful. Highly recommend EMDR to everyone. But then after you process it, there is the grief then that you have to live and feel. The loss of love for the places that never received it. The loss of the ways you never were loved that you needed to be. Thankfully, Weller has movements for us, suggestions to help loosen shame's grip on our lives, to help bring some care and compassion to that shadow place. So here are the 3 steps he recommends. First, move from feeling worthless to seeing ourselves as wounded. To even be able to say, no, this wasn't my fault. I'm not worthless, or I didn't deserve this. This is a wound that needs healing. To recognize that is the first step. And then we can move from seeing ourselves through that lens of contempt to one of compassion. So to first recognize the wound and then bring compassion to it. And then we can move from silence around it to sharing. And that is then when we receive that healing salve of community. And when we can share it, then we can hear, as I did, hearing my therapist say back to me, no, this isn't ridiculous. You aren't bad or wrong for having these emotions. Like hearing that said back to me was profoundly healing. In the sharing, we get to begin the grieving, and we get to receive the truth of all of our trauma and shame, which is that we were never alone through it, and that the one who made us loves every part of us and already knows all about those hidden shadow places within, and still loves us through and through. That is the good news for us to take into our hearts and to bring to our wounds with some compassion and love. And that's the beginning of the healing. If we can't bring self-compassion quite yet to those wounds, we can bring the love of our Creator, the one who knows all and sees all and loves all. Let us find healing in that truth and release the shame of our wounds.
So we're going to go through meditation chants in just a minute. But before I do, I wanted to describe what it meant. It is a mantra and it is in Sanskrit. It means that is whole, this is whole, from the whole, this whole came. Remove this whole from that whole, and what remains is still whole. So in this mantra, it conveys the idea that everything in existence is already complete and perfect, reminding us that true peace comes from recognizing the fullness within ourselves and the universe. The mantra concludes with a plea for peace in the heart, with others, and in the cosmos. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask you all to get nice and comfortable. Put your feet on the floor, both feet if you can. Sit up straight. Some of you might be more comfortable lying down, so you can do that as well. But go ahead and close your eyes. I'm going to lead us through this meditation. And if you start to get a feel of the words, feel of the sounds, don't be afraid to start chanting as well. I suggest humming towards the tune, as you can do that as well. Really get into the feel of it. The repetition of any mantra is really to get that deep-seated meaning for the message to kind of seep in through your system, through your energy, and really accept it in. So as you guys get comfy, stay focused on your breath. We're going to inhale and exhale slowly. If any thoughts or feelings come to mind, just let them come and let them go. Don't judge them. Be aware. Observe what's going on. Our subject is grief and loss this week. So pay attention to where you're feeling that in your body at all. As you breathe, I want you to let in whatever feels good and let go everything else. Purnamidam Purnasya Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. As I said, as you feel things, just observe. Purnamidam Purnata Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. As we listen, we affirm things to ourselves, to others, to the world around us. We all individually make up the whole of this universe. Purnata Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. We affirm, I will meditate and be peaceful and calm in my interactions with others and the world. Peacefulness comes in me, giving up the love of power for the power of love. I invite peace to be a part of my life, and I make time to experience my own inner stillness daily. I continually develop an inner sense of calm, and I trust that everything will be right. Feeling good about myself will help bring peace into my life. For me, for my loved ones, and for the collective. I know feelings of loss are temporary. I know they are here to teach me. I know that I'm supposed to grow, and I will hold these feelings, feel these feelings, and let them go. Purnata Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. Purnamata Purnamita Purnata Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. On your next inhale, I want you to bring into focus someone, something that you've lost. Picture them and Put them in your mind. Wish them well. Send them love. Say thank you. I love you. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for teaching me more about myself. Some of you may be thinking about someone that may not have treated you nicely, understood where they were in life. We can remember everyone is on their step of the journey and maybe did their best with what they had. To that, we send love and light. To them, we still send love. As you breathe in, I want you to breathe in the beautiful things that feel good to you and acknowledge that you deserve them. And as you exhale, sigh it out, breathe it out, all of the things that we're ready to let go of. For you deserve to have peace within you. Loss and grief can be heavy as long as we continue to allow it to be. So feel the feelings, let them go. Breathe in the biggest breath that you've breathed today and sigh out the rest. You are loved. You are love. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you want to support Church in the Wild and the work we do in striving for environmental and social justice, just head on over to our website, churchinthewild.org, and click the donate link at the top. There you can make a donation, set yourself up as a recurring supporter, or you can buy something from our Redbubble shop. We're so glad you're with us on this journey, following the Spirit through creation, adventure, and restoration. Until next time.